Hello, and welcome to The Way to Wow, Business Lessons from the Military. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel. And in case you're wondering, why is a business guy and a rabbi talking about business lessons from the military? So I was a chaplain in the United States Navy for a total of 16 years. Don't ask me why I didn't stay for 20. It's a long, sordid story. But in any event, I spent of that 16 years, approximately 10 of it on active duty, the other 6 basically in the reserves. And during that time, I not only had an opportunity to learn a considerable amount about military warfighting doctrine, but also advise and consult with military leaders and people in the military, from the most junior to the most senior. In the Navy, that would be seaman recruit to vice admiral. I don't think I ever actually consulted with a full admiral, but pretty close. And as a chaplain, was one of the primary advisors to whoever the commanding officer was for the particular unit to which I was assigned. So I did time in naval aviation. I did time with submarines in the naval special warfare community, as well as a tour of duty, my first one with the Marine Corps. And this show, as I mentioned in the introduction last week, is going to be examining military doctrine, military history, and the great leaders from the military, examining how they pursued their goals within the military. Of it might have been winning a battle or winning a war, or it might have just been some kind of leadership lesson. In fact, I shared one of those last week about General George Patton, one of my favorite military leaders, someone I've studied a great deal about. And I invite you to go to our YouTube channel and take a look at that show. I think if you've seen the eponymous movie Patton, you will be surprised to hear this particular lesson from Patton's life, because it does not at all fit with the character as he's portrayed in the movie, even though it is historically accurate. So today I'm going to start. We're going to start by examining warfighting doctrine for the Marine Corps. So I mentioned my first tour of duty was in Okinawa with the Marine Corps, and I had the opportunity to attend the Expeditionary Warfare School program there for about a year, by way of kind of learning what the Marine Corps was all about. As the son of a naval officer, my father had a love-hate relationship with the Marine Corps. As he used to explain to me, they were a bunch of jarheads, except if you were in a bar with a bunch of Marines and the Army showed up, in which case they were your closest buddies and you joined with them to, beat the heck out of the soldiers there. So, life back in the, 1950s and 60s, I guess. So I'm going to start out today talking about some fundamental principles of warfighting and translating them into principles we can use as a foundation for building our businesses. Okay, now I mentioned this last week in my introduction. I do not believe that being in business is the same thing as being in a war. Clearly, there is a very big difference between the two, as we're seeing, what's going on in Ukraine right now, where the death toll is, I believe, over 100,000, I think, for both sides each. So business is not an existential activity from my perspective. I have met people who think it is an existential activity, and I do not agree with that philosophy at all. However, there are principles that come from how war needs to be fought that, when modified, can really help us understand what we're up against as when we start and run a business, and what that path to success looks like, what we need to do. Okay, and so that's the perspective I'm going to be talking about each week. It's Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. on the Pacific Coast. It's 1:30 p.m. on the East Coast, an hour in, as I always say, to Mountain and Central Time. And we're going to spend a half an hour each week talking about these principles. So without further ado, let's get started. I developed a little PowerPoint presentation. Oops, here we go. So there you go. Oh, and let's see if we can get this into, here we go, play from the start. Okay, so this is the Way to Wow show, business lessons from the military, right? This is this is our logo for the Way to Wow show. Nothing too exciting here. So as those of you who have seen the show before know, everything I do relates to this concept I developed originally when I was with a naval aviation unit. I was with Carrier Air Wing 14, otherwise known as CAG 14. We were deployed on the nuclear aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan. And I needed a way to help the sailors and Marines in my air wing understand resiliency while they were on this particular deployment. So what was different about it was we all got loaded onto the ship in San Diego. I believe it was in February, if memory serves. And we no sooner pulled out from the dock when one of our nuclear reactors had to be shut down. Now, a nuclear carrier has 2 nuclear reactors, and it's specifically because they want redundancy, because the reality is, if you're out in the middle of the ocean and you have aircraft in the air and you had only 1 nuclear reactor and it had to be shut down, now the ship is going to be dead in the water. And it is not possible to recover those aircraft if the ship is not moving. So you need to have two power plants, basically, to make sure that even if one goes down, the other one can continue to propel the ship, at least until the aircraft are recovered. And then if you have to stop and do repairs or whatever you can, but you're not going to have all your pilots ditching their planes in the ocean. So there we are, steaming off the coast of Southern California, not able to do anything other than wait for that reactor to be fixed. And I was on the deck of the carrier pretty much every day, because you could go up there and walk for exercise. It's about 1,000 feet long. And I'm up there with the sailors, and a number of them are saying, hey, Rabs. That was my call sign at the air wing, Rabs, Rabbi. They point to the shore and they go, see right there? I live 2 inland from there. You know, like why am I on this ship doing nothing rather than at home with my family, right? So, and then from there, we finally got the power plant fixed, and the earthquake hit Japan. This is in 2011, and there was a tsunami, if you recall, and there was pretty significant damage there. And so we got tasked by the Navy to steam directly across the Pacific Ocean to Japan to help out with the rescue efforts and the various humanitarian assistance that Japan needed. Now, you'll say, well, wait a minute. I thought carriers never traveled without other ships on it. That in World War II, that was certainly the case. So if you're thinking about World War II movies, maybe you've seen Midway or something like that, that was the case. But in our case, the carrier could go faster than all the other ships that might have been with us in our strike group. And so off we went on our own, and we had our aircraft to protect us if we really needed it in any event, which is now how things work in an aircraft carrier strike group. And there we were on the scene, sailing back and forth through the radioactive plume that had been caused by the reactor meltdown from the earthquake there in Japan. And by the way, I like to let you know, if the lights go out and you still see me glowing, the Navy has assured us at that time there was no danger from the radiation. So it just must be, I don't know, something about my inner glow or whatever that is. Although, all kidding aside, it turned out that The Navy was not exactly correct in saying that there was no impact on any of us. There were. I have one friend in particular who, unfortunately, was disabled as a result of that. And so we had this bizarre situation where we were steaming back and forth up and down the coast of Japan, and we had what was it, about I don't know, 3,500, 4,000 people on this ship. It's like a big college dormitory on the water, and the vast majority of us were not allowed outside the skin of the ship because of the radiation, right? And so what do these sailors do? And what they tended to do was work and eat. And of course, those are fine activities, but they're not enough for sustaining healthy resilience. And so I came up with something that I called at the time the 3 pillars of fitness. And it did not look exactly like this. It was organized a little bit different way. And then many years later, when I was looking for a way to help my fellow citizens here in the United States, I reworked the 3 pillars of fitness into what I called the 3 pillars of attainment. And the 9 realms are the same as what I used back then. They're organized in a little bit different way now that I think actually makes a lot more sense. I wish I had come up with this, back in 2011, this organization anyway. And as we talk about military business lessons from the military, we're going to be dealing primarily in this realm, the finances realm, here in the pursuits pillar of the 3 pillars of attainment. Having said that, though, we're oftentimes, no, I need to go back. There we go. We're oftentimes going to find that these principles will apply in other areas of our lives. They may apply to relationships. They may apply to ourselves, how we identify ourselves, what kind of mindset we need to be in. And so while our focus is going to be primarily business, from time to time, I will mention some of these other realms in order to make this information hopefully more deeply applicable to your life. Now, I will say too, as someone who started a number of businesses over the decades, that business is a very holistic activity. So especially when you're the business owner, you're the founder, it really permeates all areas of your life. And I've talked about that in a couple of shows that I've done on my other show, People Making Money, and I invite you to take a look at those episodes as well. So the thing is, having a business, especially a startup, can absolutely consume us to the exclusion of everything else. And many a business founder has gotten successful and looked back and realized his family life is just in tatters, divorced, estranged from his children, and not in good health, not in good mental health as well, no hobbies, nothing to distract from the business. And so there they are, maybe financially successful, but the rest of their life in tatters. And so, as we talk about being successful in business, I invite you to think about some of these other areas of your life so that you can really embrace what business will do for your life more broadly. Okay. One of the things I mention quite frequently is being in our own businesses typically will give us a little more control over our schedules. So if we work for someone, then we pretty much have to work according to the schedule that they set. When we work for ourselves, we're going to have to set the schedule. Now, that can be difficult because it can encourage us to procrastinate or not get done what we need to get done. But it can also allow us, if for example, we have a child who's got a sporting event in the afternoon when normally we'd be working. All right, so maybe we'll take a couple of hours off to go see our child play soccer, right? And that just means maybe we have to put in an hour or two in the evening after our child goes to sleep or something like that. So we can do that, and we don't need to ask anybody's permission. We can organize our schedules that way. And that's a tremendous benefit of being in business for ourselves. So let's move on then to, this is in Marine Corps warfighting doctrine, the very first thing you'll encounter are the fundamentals of warfare. Now, obviously, that's what the Marine Corps is there to do. It's there to fight, right? There's a joke that I have with a friend of mine that's, you know, from all the way back from my days being with the Marine Corps. If you absolutely positively need it destroyed overnight, call the Marine Corps, right? That's what they do. So, but we're going to translate this into business fundamentals. Okay. And to be honest, I'm not sure we're going to get through all of these today. I may split this up and finish this next week, and that's fine. I'd rather take the time to really understand them than to rush through them. So the first fundamental principle in warfighting and in business is unity of effort. And it may sound so basic, like of course you want unity of effort, but how many businesses have you worked for or observed where it doesn't actually exist? So whether there's infighting among the employees, whether there isn't a clear vision on the part of leadership as to what the business is trying or is seeking to accomplish, they don't have a clear mission, they don't have clear goals, whether the business has lost its place in the marketplace and now is just kind of drifting along, and therefore nobody really knows what they need to be doing. Everybody is just, they go into the office each day or onto the factory floor or wherever it is, and they just bang out whatever it is they think they're supposed to do for their time there, and that's it. That is rampant in the business world, absolutely rampant in the business world. And it's unfortunate because eventually it will erode, if not completely destroy, the company, the organization. And so I would say that the very first principle of any business and the primary responsibility of the leader of that business is creating unity of effort. Okay? Now, in order to do that, the mission of the business must be clear to leadership. What is it we're trying to accomplish? Okay? Now, maybe it's as simple as make money by selling hamburgers. I mean, I don't know what the mission of McDonald's is. I'll just use that because it's a storied business in America, right? And it's, I believe, the largest restaurant chain in the world. So maybe their mission is to sell more hamburgers than than have ever been sold in history, or whatever it is. Okay, if that's it, then the first thing that the leadership needs to do is be very clear about that mission, and then be very certain about explaining that mission to everyone in the company. That's step number one. And then step number two, they need to provide the resources, the ability for every employee to be a part of the effort to meet that mission. That is the primary obligation of leadership in a business. Okay? And we've heard a lot recently over things like stakeholder capitalism or ESG, all this kind of stuff. I advise you set all of that aside. The fundamental reason that there is leadership, especially senior leadership in a company, is to be very, very clear in what the mission is, and then communicating that and providing the atmosphere, the resources, so that every single employee in that business can pursue that mission. That is how you create unity of effort. Okay? It's going to mean doing everything possible to keep politics, when I mean politics, I mean corporate politics, out of the business. Because once corporate politics, jockeying for position and all that kind of stuff enters into the equation, now you start to erode unity of effort. Okay, imagine being on the battlefield, or maybe you're doing house-to-house, a house-to-house operation, clearing out, terrorists or something like that. And what's foremost on, the lieutenant's mind is, how do I get an advantage over the lieutenant of the other platoon so that I'll have a better chance of being promoted to captain? How do you think that's going to work out for his Marines? Probably not very well, because there's no unity of effort there, or there's a lesser unity of effort. What that lieutenant needs to be concerned about is, what is our mission, and how do I accomplish that mission and rally my entire platoon around accomplishing that mission, hopefully with no casualties. And by the way, here's the interesting thing. If that lieutenant is successful in creating that unity of effort, i.e., completing the mission and no casualties, guess what? His chances of being promoted are very, very good. Okay, because that's how it works in the Marine Corps. Now you may say, well, gosh, that's a little bit naive, Kevin. We all know that influence in business, and to a certain extent influence in the military, can give you a leg up in promotion. That's certainly true. I'm not going to deny it. It's absolutely true. Having said that, if you have ever found yourself in an organization where pursuing the mission and completing it well does not lead you to success, then you know that organization lacks unity of effort. And in the long run, it's probably, I'm not saying it's going to go out of business, but it's not going to be as successful as another organization that pursues unity of effort. Okay, so that is the number one. And if you're, as a business owner, a founder, okay, that is your number one responsibility, to be able to articulate that mission, to convey it convincingly to everyone else working in the company, get them on board, and then provide them with the resources that they need in order to, in a unified way, pursue that mission. Okay? If you can do that, you will dramatically increase the chances that you'll be successful. Okay, so that's fundamental principle number one. Fundamental principle number two, concentration of power. Okay, that's what it is in warfighting doctrine, concentration of power. In the business world, I think we want to think of it more as concentration of resources. Okay, so in warfighting, as you can imagine, we think of it in terms of power, firepower, for example. So if you're looking to conquer a particular area, then you're going to concentrate all your firepower on that area, whether it's your howitzers, your tanks, your aircraft, or if it's a coastal position, you may have naval guns offshore. Whatever power it is you can bring to bear on achieving that objective, you want it concentrated as much as possible to just overwhelm the enemy. Okay, that's from a warfighting perspective. Now, we're not going to use missiles and bombs and all that kind of stuff in the business world, obviously, but we are going to mount resources. We're going to have capital, money to use in order to in order to pursue our mission. We're also going to have people. What human resources, right? We all know that term. I'm never quite comfortable with that term, like human resources. It kind of like, we're going to go, I don't know, dig up some people here. And we even say that, well, we need to dig up some more employees, like, I don't know, or pick them off a tree or something. The people, right? People are, this is said so often, it's a cliche, and yet it's true. People are the most important resource in a business. You can have all the capital you want, but if the people squander the capital, you're not going to be successful. And you can have all the capital you want, and if you don't have people, the capital's just going to sit there and do nothing. Okay? So people are a crucial resource. So is knowledge. You may have patents, intellectual property that the business owns or is developing. So whatever the resources are, you want all of those resources focused on achieving that mission. You don't want them sidelined into corporate politics or siphoned off, like, you know, they talk about a restaurant, what they call shrinkage, where food sort of somehow disappears out the back door, right? That all that does is it damages your margins when you're running a restaurant and makes it harder for the restaurant to be profitable. If there's unity of effort and a concentration of resources, then there's far less likely that that will happen, because people will understand we need to take all of the resources of that restaurant and focus them on achieving what it is we're trying to achieve. And maybe it's, you know, top customer satisfaction. Maybe it's providing a venue for people to enjoy the special moments in their lives. Whatever the mission of that restaurant is, if everybody feels a part of it, then they'll be more likely to concentrate all their resources, all the resources they bring as a person, all the resources you make available to them in order for them to do the work of running that restaurant. Okay, well, look, we got through 2, we've got 2, 4, 6, we got 8 of these. So next week, I'm going to continue with these fundamental principles, initiative, agility, etc. And I think you'll see as we go farther and farther into this, not only do these build on each other, we just saw how concentration of resources helps build unity of effort. Okay, we'll also see that they all work not interchangeably, they all work in concert to make success more likely. Okay, so I invite you to be with me every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, and an hour in for Central and Mountain time. And we will talk about more business lessons from the military.
I didn't get that.
Oh, there goes Siri. She just likes to chime in periodically when I'm talking. So I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel. And tomorrow, just to make you aware, every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific, 3:30 p.m. Eastern is my other show, People Making Money, where we talk about a broader range of topics related to financial success. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking about some fundamentals of investing, the basic types of investment, and how they work, so you can start understanding, once you start your business, you start earning money, right? You're going to want to make some investments, maybe a retirement account, etc. And so I'm going to talk about those tomorrow. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There will be a link in the show notes for you to do that. And that way, every time a new show starts, you'll get notified, or you'll get notified when it posts, when a new show posts at the end, and you can go and view it after the fact. Let your friends know that we're here on Tuesday mornings and Wednesday midday. And if they're interested in professional success, this is the place to be. So thank you very, very much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. And as I do on the People Making Money show, I'm going to sign off in this show the same way, and that is in paying tribute to my dear friend Marie Darlin, big supporter of the military that you and your husband were. You are still my belle. Thank you very, very much, and we will see you next week.